Weapons is basically just, I'll spoil it enough to say that it's Peggity Peg who lost her leg. If you remember that children's book.
Yep.
But instead of turning the children into food, they just run out of their houses and no one knows where they went. And the viral marketing behind this movie was so enormously effective that I needed to know more. I sought out the leaked script, and I had the self-control to stop reading it. At the perfect point, I realized, as I was watching the actual movie. Because if I had kept on reading, I would have ruined the complete joy that is this opening arc of it. It is so strong, so effective. There's just so much desperation, tension, and despair swirling around. And what unfortunately happens for Creggar, he's doing something really interesting with this Rashomon, setup and storytelling. You get all these different events from different perspectives. They all have there's subtle differences that can be found. And I don't really know what the point of them is. But eventually the movie gets to a point where everything is made clear. And that's when this perfect engine that has been driving the experience the whole time starts to sputter a little bit. Because the ambiguity and the mystery is what made everything so alluring and scary. And while it still is, scary and it's tense, and there's certainly some more, heart-pounding moments instead of dread-filled ones, knowing what's going on kind of cheapens things a little bit because you realize what it is. And it's just a wicked witch comes to town. And
welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 73. This week, we're back in the world of sophomoric films from promising horror directors. We have a featured review of the movie Weapons. This movie, it's been propelled by a really fantastic marketing campaign. It's got a lot of early word-of-mouth buzz. But we once again, we have to ask ourselves, have we found the next horror wunderkind? But we've been here before. We've been here before, and we've been here before recently. So Chuck and I, we're going to carve through all this guerrilla marketing. We're going to cut through all the hyperbole, and we're going to declare if Zach Creggar is the real deal or not. Now, in lieu of news today, we've got a massive watch list. It's brimming with comedy and more. And of course, stick around for the end of the show. We've got our non-movie recommendations with the Mentionables. Please do like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here on the channel. But otherwise, Chuck, anything else before we get into the show?
I wanted to point out, we are really balancing, the pitch blackness of Weapons with some really lighthearted fare. We're talking about wacky comedies and, a really, underseen musical from last year. And, of course, the return of two titans of, adult animation. But one quick note before we get into the body of the episode being that we were fucking spared, apparently, from having to experience another Pedro Pascal movie this year.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
Because of the writer's strikes, because of all the strikes that happened, we didn't get the version of Weapons starring Pedro Pascal. And other people, really interesting casting choices would have been in that version. Renata Rensive, the girl from The Worst Person in the World, was going to be in that version. And it did seem intriguing on that level. But I'm so glad that we got Josh Brolin playing the dad in Weapons versus Pedro. I think that we got the better timeline here.
Yeah, it would have been I can just picture him basically transposing the Joel
Yeah,
role from Last of Us into this movie, and that's like exactly what it would have been. I mean, down to like the like brown Carhartt coat that both him and Josh Brolin wear in this movie. Yeah, the Pedro Pascal haters are eating good this week
eating
with
real
all of
good.
the talk surrounding the casting with this.
He literally could have just walked off one set and gone to the other. You know, like it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been difficult. But let's kick off the watch list here. You got to see, and I really want to see this movie. The Is this a triumphant return for the Naked Gun franchise?
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's really really funny. So funny yet so stupid, and that's exactly what I want. I consider myself a fan of the Zucker Abraham Zucker like parody movies. And I mean even more so. I'm a millennial, so I'm a fan of the natural extension of those movies, which are, I would say, the first three or so scary movie films, which were just massive when I was a kid. And so yeah, I fully support this movie. I fully support it getting a theatrical release on top of anything. This is a pure comedy movie. It's not some genre fusion like romantic comedy or dramedy, which is like all we seem to get nowadays. All of the comedy movies are also like relegated to streaming services, it seems like these days, because they're easy to produce. They're easy to just, throw like 5 or 10 million dollars at and just, dump it on your streaming service. And so, yeah, I fully support this. And I'm pretty sure I wrote in our doc, I'm pretty sure the last like pure comedy movie I saw in theaters was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which came out like 3 years
That's
ago. So
crazy that it's that
yeah,
long ago.
yeah, it's nuts. And I mean, I think, and I was trying to rack my brain for like other movies that I could have seen but just chose not to. And really the only other thing I could think of was that Jennifer Lawrence comedy, No Hard Feelings. And I don't know, that I just wasn't really all that interested in it. But I would call that a comedy movie too. But yeah, Naked Gun. Um, it's the rare movie that doesn't put all of its best jokes in the trailer, and that's partially because this thing is firing off jokes just rapid fire, multiple jokes a minute. You're missing jokes because you are so busy laughing at the previous joke that was just said. I mean, just rapid fire. There are jokes in the foreground of scenes, there are jokes in the background of scenes, all happening at the same time. It's exactly what you want with this type of movie. And, my personal favorite, I don't think it's very good content to just explain jokes from comedy movies, but I will just say that my favorite, like, single joke from this movie is this reoccurring gag that, you always see in these, like, cop type movies. When a cop shows up on a crime scene, they're always handed a cup of coffee. They lift the police tape to go under the police tape, and then they're handed a cup of coffee. And that is like a reoccurring joke in this movie where Liam Neeson is constantly being handed cups of coffee, even if it doesn't make any sense. He's driving his car and then a hand comes through the driver's side window and hands him a cup of coffee, or he already has a cup of coffee in both hands and he's handed another one, and he has like three cups all of a sudden. And so that's my personal favorite joke or from this movie. And that's exactly what you're getting. That this just this stupid, like completely surreal type of humor. And um that's when the movie's at its best. And when the movie's at its worst is when it tries to do these like extended bits, basically dragging the same joke over like a scene that lasts multiple minutes. And thankfully that doesn't happen too often. There's this weird kind of joke about like TiVo of all things,
Yeah,
where
with the
yeah, Liam Neeson, he's like obsessed with his like TiVo, with people touching his TiVo. And it's about, I mean, it's like 20 years too late. There's also this like Buffy the Vampire Slayer like gag that goes on for way too long again. And it's like 20 years too late. It's like, why is there this just like this random Buffy the Vampire Slayer like extended scene? And again, thankfully it doesn't happen too often, stuff like that. And so, um, the movie is hilarious. And uh, the plot, I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the plot, everything in this movie, the plot, the music, the everything, the acting itself, it's all just a vehicle for jokes, everything. And so that's what you're getting. And I highly recommend seeing it. I highly recommend seeing it in a theater because I don't know, you just gotta like be in like a room full of people, or at least like at home with a room full of people, get your, this is PG-13 too,
Really?
very, very, yeah, very, very like not, you're not getting like these R-rated bits in this thing. So, grab like your family and watch this too, because there's not much in here that is going to be that offensive to a lot of people. And so, um, there's something kind of sad about watching a movie like this, like by yourself at home, just like on like a streaming service. So yeah, I mean, go to it in the theater when you can watch it with a bunch of strangers, or when it does eventually make its way to VOD, rent it and watch it with like your family, watch it with your friends, whatever. Because it really works well that way. So yeah, yeah. Full-throated recommendation.
As full-throated as that pantomime blowjob scene.
Yeah, yeah, I guess there is that. I mean, I guess maybe you don't want to watch that with your parents, um but yeah, there's not much more like that. This is very like PG-13 comedy. Just a lot of like double entendres, a lot of like dad joke type stuff. So, yeah.
And this is like the one case where like, because I'm really annoyed when actors who make a movie together start dating or like something like that, fall in love.
Oh yeah.
But in this instance, it feels like so genuine and pure. The fact that Pam Anderson and Liam Neeson have found each other from being in this movie together. And it makes me like warm inside. Just because I
Mhm.
know how like fucked up Neeson has been since Natasha Richardson died tragically. Like there was always paparazzi photos of him like leaving a bar with like pissed jeans.
Yeah.
Like that was just like a part of his image for a really long time. And the man deserves happiness. And so does Pam Anderson, even though she's, you know, going au natural in the makeup and everything. Everyone's, aging naturally now in Hollywood. That's hip. And those two people, after everything they've been through, as far as their relationships go, they couldn't do better than each other. And that makes me want to see it, just to see what the chemistry actually is, I guess. But that's outside of the movie itself. I really want to see this, and I've been excited for it ever since the first trailer for it dropped. So I'm gonna, hopefully it doesn't take me as long to see it as it took me to see this next movie on the watch list, Better Man, the Robbie Williams biopic that no one fucking saw. Like they spent a lot of money on this movie. Nobody saw it. Like it made maybe $20 million globally, which is not what you want for a movie that costs like 80 million to make and was pushed as heavily as this was. But that said, everyone knows the gimmick. He, instead of an actor just portraying him, you have this really outstanding effect throughout the whole movie where it's a chimpanzee, like face and hands, and like some mannerisms are very animalistic. And as someone who didn't have a clue, never heard a song by him until I saw a trailer for this, because he was one of those Britpop singers who is like monstrously successful in the UK and Europe, never crossed over into the United States. It made me ask why, with that knowledge, did they try and sell a movie about this guy to people who had never heard of him before. But before seeing the movie, I did listen to a lot of his music. Just because some of like there's one song in particular called Rock DJ, which is, I don't even really know how to describe it. He's like Brit rapping, but it's got a really good hook, as far as a pop song goes. And that sequence is kind of like the centerpiece of the movie, because instead of like giving us the songs chronologically like in the point of his career where they're relevant, the songs kind of like are peppered throughout jukebox musical style. So like that song represents him and his first boy band Take That being successful. And it's this raucous sequence of them coming out from signing the deal. And it like that, I think, really is, kind of like shows like what the experience is like. You have these crazy musical numbers that, you know, you are constantly shifting and moving. The world as the stage, is, they take advantage of that. All things are possible during the musical sequences. And but at the same time, the quiet, like more intimate stuff where it's just this monkey singing, is, like alone in a room, are like still really effective for some reason. And the man's real story is a lot more engaging, not having to see like a little boy sitting in the bathtub asking, saying to his gran, I don't want to be nobody. Like, I want to be somebody. And, her just being supportive and being like, you're enough, lad. Here, let's make a soap mohawk, out of you. Because, like, his mom was supportive, but she had to, raise him on her own effectively, because his dad was like a stand-up comedian, like MC, with like delusions of grandeur of what his own career could be. And he was constantly chasing, the success that his father was also chasing, except he actually got to have it. But it doesn't do really boring things with the biopic musical formula. It gets like really truly surprisingly intimate, and it gets into things that I don't think the public really knew about, like with his real relationships and how they fell apart and why, like it and why the band breaks up, for his initial band, why he goes solo. There's this funny scene with like the Oasis guys where they're his heroes. He like really wants to like make serious, like artistic pop music instead of like the girl band, girl focused band shit, that like really drives success in that sphere. Like he was tired of being a Backstreet Boy and he wanted to be something more than that. And but ultimately he doesn't become more than that. He's still just a disposable pop singer, and he like, and he's at peace with it. But the interesting thing is that every single time he's like performing, his self-doubt is reflected in the audience, where he sees all these like younger versions of himself, like basically heckling him and messing with him. And like every musical sequence is marred by him fucking up because he's so self-critical. And it builds and builds to like this big festival performance. And in the midst of that festival performance, it stops being like it's like in the Queen movie, they just recreate one for one the Live Aid, performance. But in this movie, it eventually evolves into this like all out like fucking fantasy war where he's like pulling swords out and having this like battle where he's killing like thousands of like facsimiles of himself. And it culminates with him literally killing his child self that we meet at the beginning of the movie. And that's when I was like, okay, what the fuck? This is so much more than just a musical biopic movie. Like, it's nothing like great. Like, it doesn't really execute well enough where like obviously everybody was, struck with it. But I certainly was. It's like, this was so much more worth my time, I think, than any other
Elvis.
like Elvis, like even like a complete unknown, like, which was all like highfalutin. Like, this was more honest in a way, because it's not trying to like be historic, like it's not acting like it's giving us some version of history we never got to see. We're just like it's just taking a very common story and just being a little bit more introspective.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Luca,
So I
you want to
guess
play with the microphone?
with this movie, I I haven't seen it, of course,
Yeah.
but my sort of question is maybe the answer to this question is already out there, but I haven't looked. But maybe you have an opinion on this. But why do the monkey
Hey,
thing in the
Luca,
first place? Like,
Luca. Hey, Luca, it's okay.
um
Come here.
what is the reasoning behind turning him into a monkey? Have they said that, or is that just something you're supposed to interpret, or do you have an interpretation of that?
Yeah, like it's this how he sees himself. So like if we take that at face value,
Yeah.
somebody like the director Michael Gracie was pitching him on like, hey, let's make a movie about you, mate, or something like that. And he was like, oh, I don't want it to be just a regular old musical movie. Why don't I just be a monkey the whole time? Won't that be great? You know? And and they were utterly committed to it. And it at least makes it more interesting throughout because you have all these other actors engaging with him like he's a regular person, and then he'll just chimp out randomly during
Sure.
certain scenes. And
Okay.
yeah, like it's a gimmick, but they're completely open about like what the gimmick is. It's like we know what we're doing. Is that like cause enough to watch it? Probably not. But it was more than I think what other movies would have done. But
Hmm.
it was just it's a it was a failure, but in terms of box office and you making people actually give a shit about this guy. But I guess like when I came away from it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool, I guess. And especially the finale, it was just it was so unexpected.
Sure. Yeah. And where was this? Is this on Paramount Plus,
Or
I'm
Prime
guessing?
Video.
Oh, Prime Video. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to check that out.
Well, now we'll jump over to the latest from Parker and Stone.
All right. So, yeah, the new season of South Park, episodes 1 and 2 of season 27. Those are what is currently available. And I don't need to spend a ton of time on this one. I watched this because I got sort of caught up in the buzz and the hype, basically. And I don't think I've regularly watched South Park in, God, I don't know, 15 years maybe. But I do think it is fascinating that this show that is now almost 30 years old can sort of occasionally re-enter like the collective consciousness, the pop culture consciousness. And it can also like really work people up still, like as far as to like piss people off. And of course, you've probably heard by now, episode 1 of this season is largely about Donald Trump, and episode 2 is largely about ICE raids. And I guess what I'll say for my part is I don't think that these episodes, they're not particularly clever, and they're not even really that like intelligently written. I think like the South Park writers room formula just basically seems to be like, what is a weird quirk or eccentricity about a person that we can just exploit and then blow up to like the nth degree, and then that's how they get like their jokes, that's how they get their bits and stuff. And so yeah, not particularly clever, but what I do think the show has working in its favor is its ability to be like really topical, because I think the turnaround time on these episodes are literally like a week. Like they can make an entire South Park episode in like a week, and that's been documented in the documentary that I believe is on Paramount Plus
6 days to
about that.
air.
Yeah, 6 days there. So and then it's shock value too, because this is still the only show that you're going to see on network TV that is going to show, Donald Trump's penis waving around. And this is the only show on network TV where you're going to hear certain words that they will just eat the FCC fine because they don't give a shit. They're just like, we're going to say these words and you can just fine us every time it happens because apparently this show is still incredibly huge. Because this was news to me, but yeah, Trey Parker and Matt Stone just signed a new like $1.5 billion contract with Paramount. And so, you can do whatever you want when you're in a situation like that. So yeah, they were good. I mean, they were funny. The episodes were funny, like a lot of South Park is, but nothing revelatory, really. I mean, just kind of stupid, stoner humor, which is kind of what South Park has always been, in my opinion, for much of its airtime. You get the occasional episode that sort of breaks through like the pop culture consciousness, like these ones, or like the Warcraft episode, stuff like that. And so, if you have Paramount or whatever, give them a watch. They're good enough for a laugh.
They're still around, and like I had forgotten like how much of a bidding war there had been in previous years for the streaming rights, because this is what's been crazy. Since like 2017, I think it was, or maybe 2018, Paramount was shelling out the money to produce the show and have it air on Comedy Central, and for the occasional special that was on Paramount Plus. But HBO Max has had the South Park maybe since like 2020, I think it is. Like they've had the rights to like stream the seasons of the show proper this whole time. It wasn't on the company paying for the new shit, which is just like completely bonkers to me. But that's how valuable it is. And what's, I guess, lost in like all of the political stuff surrounding, Viacom and the Sundance merger and all of that, is that like they took advantage of the Colbert cancellation and the uproar over that, and they were basically being like, yeah, this evil company that everyone hates right now is the reason why you can't see the new South Park episodes yet. Like we're working on them. We wish you could see them, but like behind the scenes, what they were asking for was like a 10-year deal for $3 billion. And Skydance was saying like, fuck no, you're crazy, we're not going to commit to that. So instead they got the deal that they presently see. But what has been misreported is that it's them selling South Park. They did not sell South Park. They still own it lock, stock, and barrel. In a few years, however many years it is, once this deal expires, they're going to sign another one for even more fucking money. Unless it stops being, an eyeball attractor. And I guess that speaks to the virtue that has kept the show relevant since the fucking 20th century. But it's their ability to make every single person of any stripe have a reason to watch it, whether it's to laugh at something or to be mad at something. And and then that's fascinating to watch too, because some people are watching because they don't like the person who's like being mocked, and they like want to see them be laid low on like in front of like the largest thing possible. And it's nice when certain people have a good sense of humor about being mocked. Like Charlie Kirk apparently has just been like, this is great, I love this, because outside of the political, addled brains of the people who are on Twitter and Reddit all day long, who knows who Charlie Kirk is? You know what I mean? But now he's a South Park character. And like Christy Nome can, bitch and moan about it. She's the other side of the coin. She hates it. I'm sure Trump fucking hates it. But on the one hand, it's like, it's kind of great that like you are the Saddam Hussein of South Park.
Yeah. Like
you're the next guy. And it's like, it's kind of fun. I think it's fun. I I missed that era where it's like oh buddy, just pouring water out on the floor, where like where Satan and his boyfriends, whoever they are, like I missed that kind of stuff. Like I haven't watched South Park religiously, probably I guess since the Coon era, like where where they're superheroes and Cartman's flying on Cthulhu's back, like that whole business. Like I've been out of the loop for a really long time, and I could, because like I was hearing that they were slipping, and maybe that's still true, but they're not slipping enough that people aren't watching it, like en masse. And I'll maybe someday burn through as much of this as I can. But I want to point out this trailer that's been running this whole time, none of it is going to be in the new season. They were basically told that you are required to make a sizzle reel so we can promote this. And they were like, we have nothing ready to go.
Yeah.
So they just made up a whole bunch of shit, but it's all relevant and topical stuff, like planes crashing into each other, the idea of Butters and a bunch of kids having to be air traffic controllers, and it just ending in disaster. Randy Marsh just pushing ketamine on people, like I don't know, like I wish that this stuff was in the new season because it was really getting me to laugh. Just
I love the live action footage too. That's just like randomly thrown in there.
Well, P. Diddy in space, like come on, like are you sure we can't do that? But I guess like his case is done and dusted, so who gives a shit? But yeah, there's things happening here that I think, what else are you gonna watch? Like there isn't any other adult animation worth watching, I suppose, except for what I'm gonna talk about now, which is, I had the day off yesterday, and while doing chores, I put on season 14 of King of the Hill. I didn't watch it while it was on the air. I watched it after it was ultimately canceled, initially. And this new season, it works in the same like vein that a lot of these reboot shows do, where it's like we're going to take these characters basically from like another century, it feels like, and have them deal with modern day bullshit. Like that's the gimmick essentially. The Hills had been like living in Saudi Arabia, like working for like a propane company or something like that. And they come back to Arlen, Texas, and everyone's missed them. Everything's fucking weird and different. Like all of their friends are like, oh God, like we've been so lost without you this whole time. And they're, and of course Bobby, has a weird like German Japanese fusion steakhouse that he's running. And the thing about it though is that it hasn't lost its charm. Like it still works, even though like they're having to confront like more modern things, like, but it's like you're seeing the kid characters as adults now. And Bobby, and I forget the girl's name, the Laotian girlfriend that he never could really be with, because he wasn't Laotian himself, but she's in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. So there's the chance that they could really be together in some way. And like, how does he really feel about that? Like the modern mores and the small town Texas mores still clash, and Hank Hill and everyone still has to confront them in different ways, but it still is fun. Like there's an entire episode where like I can't remember the character's name, but the conspiracy theorist guy, Gribble.
Yeah, Dale Gribble.
Dale Gribble.
I think.
Like because like while he was overseas in Saudi Arabia, Hank became a soccer fan. And he makes a comment that betrays that, and he's too like embarrassed to admit that in front of like his football friends, like in the football culture. And they begin to suspect, or Dale begins to suspect that he's been Manchurian candidated by the Saudi royal family, and he's come back to Ireland to do a terrorist attack because he's a soccer fan now. Like that, he would never do that. That's such a betrayal. And I don't know. I still had a lot of fun with it, and it wasn't like eye rolling or like lame when like they would dig into things like gig culture. Like there's a day where Hank's just like helping one of the people out because he hurt his back and he can't do his chore chimp jobs anymore, and he doesn't want his score to drop, so he starts doing it for him, and then he runs into the modern economy of making sure that you get a 5-star rating. Well, why didn't I get a 5-star rating? I better go back to that couple and do some more work for them, and make them realize that I deserve better than that. And it's fun. I haven't watched the whole season, but I'm probably going to burn through it here pretty quick.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I want to jump on it too, because there's kind of this weird, like, I don't know, like sadness or like weird sort of shadow over this season because of the fact that, like, I think it was we're up to 3 now of the cast members of this show have like died in the last like 6 months, which is really strange. But yeah, I mean,
take my ice pick away from my top.
Oh God. But yeah, I do definitely want to get to it. I've heard nothing but good things, and I think Greg, Mike Judge, of course, is sort of the brainchild of this show. But you also have Greg Daniels in there, who has sort of proven that he's good at sort of parodying our modern culture with Upload, the Prime Video show Upload, which I never finished, but I watched the first, I want to say, 2 seasons of, and that show is all about is all about just parodying modern culture. And so I can see where the translation from that show to this show would work really well. So yeah, definitely want to jump on board this too.
Yeah, no, it's like having old friends back, and not in a way that makes you sad. You're like, why haven't you been here this whole time? Especially when some other shows have overstayed their welcome. But maybe like that gap, they still like, his Futurama, the new seasons of Futurama suck. Like they don't have, like, I don't know, like it seems like really lame, and like, hello fellow kids, see us still being funny about things. It doesn't work. This still works because these characters, they're more down home and simple, but like the situations aren't heightened. It's very real stuff, and it's still fun. Ultimately, that's why it works.
Yeah.
All right, time to go into the main event here. As long as my son stops being mad at me for not allowing himself to hurt himself. But I guess that's a good segue into this feature review about Zach Creggar's sophomore film Weapons. Now, when I was watching this in the theater, something clicked in my head, and I realized, like, what is the wave of modern horror? What can we really we can't how can it be defined? It's not like slashers or like torture porn, what's really going on here in the moment? And what you have a lot of filmmakers doing is basically doing like Grimm's Brothers fairy tales, but with a creepypasta edge to it. That's the only way to describe it. The type of thing that you'd find on a message board. It would have this really overwrought, setup in its like narration to explain what's going on, but the effect is still there. Like there's a hook to a lot of these movies that's just like razor sharp. You get pulled in no matter what, and they usually have like grounded, real world settings, but there's just something supernatural or inexplicable going on that like makes it memorable or fucked up in some way. Like Long Legs is like an obvious, one to put in there. Both of the Philippou brothers films definitely inhabit that space. And so did Barbarian, Zach Creggar's first film. The idea of, oh, there's this weird house in Detroit that people keep disappearing into. Like, why does this house have this massive, like, obviously hidden tunnel that goes to nowhere? Like what the fuck is down there? And that's and ultimately every hook is like, what the fuck is down there? Like, what is going on with this figure who appears and takes your children or does something fucked up to your family? And in Weapons, it's basically just, I'll spoil it enough to say that it's like, it's Higgity Peg who lost her leg. If you remember that children's book.
Yep.
But instead of turning the children into food, they just run out of their houses and no one knows where they went. And the viral marketing behind this movie was so enormously effective that I needed to know more. I sought out the leaked script, and I had the self-control to stop reading it. At the perfect point, I realized, as I was watching the actual movie. Because if I had kept on reading, I would have ruined the complete joy that is this opening arc of it. It is so strong, so effective. There's just so much desperation, tension, and despair swirling around. And what unfortunately happens for Creggar, he's doing something really interesting with this Rashomon, setup and storytelling. You get all these different events from different perspectives. They all have there's subtle differences that can be found. And I don't really know what the point of them is. But eventually the movie gets to a point where everything is made clear. And that's when this perfect engine that has been driving the experience the whole time starts to sputter a little bit. Because the ambiguity and the mystery is what made everything so alluring and scary. And while it still is, scary and it's tense, and there's certainly some more, heart pounding moments instead of dread filled ones, knowing what's going on kind of cheapens things a little bit because you realize what it is. And it's just a wicked witch comes to town. And at the same time, he replaces that initial ambiguity with more ambiguity. But the questions that it made me ask kind of made me see, oh, there's contrivances and what I would consider to be plot holes that can only be explained by the magical realism of what's going on. We just have to think, oh, these cops aren't incompetent. They're just having the wool pulled over their eyes. And at the same time, I've listened to enough true crime content to know that, and reported on enough actual, trials and things where the police are incompetent and they can't actually prove a case, let alone make an arrest sometimes. And, and that's, kind of real, I guess. But at the same time, there was things that just made me go, there's no way that they wouldn't figure it out, that there's something weird going on with this weird lady in the one family that wasn't affected by what happened here, that they wouldn't dig deeper. And that's when I started questioning, the notion that this is a perfect horror film. This is one of the all-time greats, and Zach Creggar is a king that we should worship at the throne of. And I guess that's kind of where, the lesson I took away from the end of the movie, which is that we really shouldn't be so quick to anoint somebody just because we want to rationalize the hype that we gave the lead up to seeing something. We shouldn't make him something he isn't yet. The guy still has to earn it. Not everybody is like a Quentin Tarantino who instantly is just the guy, or a Paul Thomas Anderson who just shows himself to be, completely, capable and in control. And I guess Paul Thomas Anderson is a good example because that guy had to work his way up to being a true master. He made some good first couple movies, but they weren't perfect. It took him a while to make his perfect film, and we should give him a chance. Because just like look at Ari Aster, we really kind of know better who Ari Aster is after seeing him at bat a few more times. And I'm not saying that Weapons is like a giant misstep or that you shouldn't see it. You absolutely should see it. It's one of the better, films that you're probably going to see this year. But there's a time and a place for giving somebody the crown. And I think with further analysis, that doesn't just evolve into, oh, like this is a reference to The Shining. Like it's so deep. There's a surface level, there's what's intended, and then there's what the fart sniffing, like art theorists can come up with. But Weapons, not a perfect movie, but a damn good one. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm largely in kind of the same boat. I had a lot of time to think about this one. My wife had no interest in seeing it, so it was a lot of like just sitting with my thoughts about it as, my first impressions, like the second the theater lights came on, they were pretty fantastic. But then like, the ride home, I was kind of like starting to question some things. And then by the time that I pulled into my driveway, I was sort of like questioning my previously self-evident like canonization of this guy that I was like, you know, like so enraptured by it the second that the theater lights went up. But
Luca,
in
no,
that
no,
vein, I
no,
think
no,
that Weapons is best
no,
while you are watching it, not
Luca,
after, is kind of the best way that I would describe it.
no,
Um, while I was watching it, I felt like a hamster, lapping at my little drip feed of water, just trying to get the information I wanted. I wanted every little bit of information that was being doled out to me. I wanted to see how the puzzle came together. But upon reflection, I think that the narrative structure is sort of what betrays the movie, because the promise of that narrative structure is a more, a tangled, complex like ending, or something more complex than what we get, both in plot and in like theme, like in importance. Like you really think that you're going to be led somewhere important, and then it kind of just leads to a place that's very like, for lack of a better word, pedestrian, I guess. And the conclusion, it's uncomplicated, it's full of humor, it's full of pageantry, but I think luckily he sort of reins himself in enough that it's not as overblown as Barbarian's finale was. Like I really hated the last like 20 minutes of Barbarian, and it almost ruined the movie for me, honestly. And that's not nearly the case with this movie. I think Weapons is the superior film to that one. It's the sign of a director that is growing. I think there are many moments in this that really herald a filmmaker that has a firm grip on being able to build tension. And he has the audience in the palm of his hand throughout a lot of this movie. Like, you will feel scared when he wants you to. You will laugh when he wants you to. You will wince when he wants you to. He has you in the palm of his hand. And so I think I fully endorse the theatrical experience of this. I like The Naked Gun, like completely opposite movies, but like that movie, bet you have to see this in a theater. There's really no reason not to, because I think it enhances the experience. But what I will say is just don't think about it too much on the car ride home. Is kind of where I'll leave it there for
yeah.
now. But yeah, I don't know where you want to go from here. Should we start with the gun in the sky? I think that's kind of the big divisive thing with this movie, isn't it? I guess is kind
Yeah.
of that gun. So yeah, what I want to know what you make of that, and what it means. What if it was a big blunder to include it? Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, because to answer that question, I think we need to hone in a little bit on what the title even means. And
Sure. Mhm.
the because like yeah, the commentary of, as far as the like what the gun is trying to illustrate is that this very fairy tale Pied Piper of Hamelin scenario is, he's trying, like, he's alluding to school shootings and just mass shootings in general. That's very obvious. Why you choose to show it in a dream sequence with a giant floating AR-15 that turns into an alarm clock is something I don't understand, and I wish he hadn't done, because to me, that really, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison here. Like when a shooting happens, you know exactly what's happened to your loved one, and we can know enough. We don't need the explicit motive, but for some reason that person decided to go to a place and kill innocents. You don't need to know exactly why, but something was wrong with that person. That's all you need to know. And it just was the wrong place and time to invoke that. And it was just bizarre. But when we talk about the title and everything else that happens in the movie, it's that there's all of these things that harm people, because like that's what a weapon is, right? It's something that hurts people. And as far as society goes, it's like if you deal drugs, that's, that harms people. That's criminalized. But but alcohol isn't. But alcoholism is another underlying theme here. Addiction in general is. And that's interesting. But like anything that causes grief in other people, it can be weaponized. Your
cheating.
Yeah, cheating. Yeah, your desire. Yeah, exactly. Like there's like all these little transgressions. Are vehicles, that are weaponized, in some way. And so like he is trying to say something interesting, and I really wanted to understand better what the title was supposed to mean in the context, going in. But I don't really get it in the in the aftermath. What did you make of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're no doubt right about this movie being about, school shootings. To me, the actual AR-15, floating in the sky during the dream, it speaks to me as if insecurity is how I would say. That's what it speaks. It speaks to me like a director who didn't think his point was getting across, and I don't know why he thought that, because I think it's fairly obvious, without the giant AR-15 in the sky, it's fairly obvious what this movie is about, but it screams of insecurity to me. And to build on that thought, I really hate this, that there has been recently in interviews with directors, in the lead up to their movie releasing, in press interviews, there has been this trend of directors, of interviewers asking if a movie is about a certain thing, and then the directors being like, no, it's not about that. It's actually not about that at all, even though it clearly is. Like this has been a trend.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, own it. And it reeks of insecurity. And I just want to point to this. Creggar's been out there giving a lot of interviews, and he always inevitably gets asked about the school shooting thing, and he always says no. And it's clearly like getting on his nerves because of how like short and like perfunctory his answers have become. And I want to point to this. There was an interview given with this just rando podcast called Next Best Picture.
Yeah.
And I just want to read the interviewer's words exactly. And so what the interviewer said was, for me, based on the title, the initial premise, my brain immediately goes to a metaphor for school shootings, which are obviously far too common in this country. And it's something that really upsets the viewer. I think transporting that into a horror genre, intentionally or unintentionally, is genius on your part. Was that the catalyst for why you wanted to tell this story? And was there a particular moment? And then Creggar just flatly says, no. That is his answer to that entire query. And then the interviewer kind of says, no. Okay, so where did the idea originate from? And then Krieger says, I mean, to me, it's not about school shootings. I don't want this movie to be political at all. And that's the entire answer he gives. So, fucking clown. You're a fucking clown for giving that answer, Krieger. I just gotta say, as good as some of this parts of this movie are, that is just clown show answer. And so, yeah, this is clearly, it is about school shootings. I don't care what he's saying in his interviews. That's exactly what this movie is about. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of my
Well,
thoughts
to
on that.
reinforce that a little bit, there is, there was a very like obvious change because I had heard people mention it, and I went back and I pulled up the whole script and read through it, and there is something that was in the original script that is, if it was an accident, this probably explains why it was removed. But the whole plot point about the Alex, the little boy, having to bring objects from his classmates to the witch, originally it was going to be about Valentine's. He gave the witch all the Valentines that his classmates gave him. And for people who don't remember, the Parkland shooting in Florida happened on Valentine's Day. And like if he just did that because, oh, this is a clever way to do it, and then somebody gave him the note of, oh, like, so this whole movie is about school shootings, isn't it? And he chickened out and made the change that he made. I don't know, but it was either it was deliberate and he toned it down, or it was an accident and he was running away from the illusion. Because like I'll give him some grace in that this movie isn't supposed to be saying anything political about school shootings. It's talking about what happens in the aftermath, what happens in loss, what happens in trauma and grief. Like that's what it's about. And that's fair. But then just give this that answer instead of acting like everyone who's pointing out the obvious is just sniffing farts. It's like you went way too far to make people validate that view. So stop acting like you didn't mean to.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily political to say school shootings happen too often and then just leave it there. And I think that, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who would, make that political, but I don't think it necessarily is. And I think that's kind of what the overall message would be. But to go back to your point about the Valentine's Day thing, I think he was right to pull that out, because I think with that Valentine's Day thing in there, you go from sort of the generalized being about school shootings to being about like a particular school shooting.
Yeah.
And then that's when I think you start getting into trouble, as far as like you are alluding to a specific event that happened rather than just kind of the generalized idea of school shootings. And so that was probably for the better to honestly take that out, because then you probably would have had like the parents of those children in the media condemning the movie, or at least be at risk of that. I don't know, maybe they would have agreed with the message, but
and then on that token, then there's people who would definitely come out of the woodwork and be like really opposed to the movie for political reasons. They'd be like, oh, this guy's just trying to take our guns away. Like that crowd would suddenly have a reason to like hate on this movie online. And then the whole discourse is just, to shit. And so that might explain him just being like, just shutting this shit down. I'm not going to go there. You need to stop going there, because he doesn't want everybody talking about that. Like he wants them talking about the positives, I guess, which we can, kind of dig into. But that's just to put a pin in like another aspect of the title is like this whole notion of parasites, who I guess like I don't know if they necessarily weaponize the body against itself or like yourself against yourself, but I guess that's kind of the takeaway that I got from it is that like your own um like your own biology is hijacked, and
Yeah.
and so it's like the way that your body works is taken over and subsumed by something else, and you either are aware of it or you're not, but there's only so much you can do to confront it, unless you have like ivermectin, I guess, and you got worms. But yeah, the
Yeah, and of course there's like the to go along with that line of thinking, there's the like nature documentary that Benedict Wong is watching about the ant and getting its body hijacked by the
the
parasite. And
cordyceps, yeah.
yeah, and so there's like stuff, there's definitely stuff about that in there. You could definitely say. And um yeah, I think there's definitely some stuff like that. I think there's a lot of people that are being very charitable to the movie. I think in ways that people were being very charitable to readings of Barbarian being about like Me Too movement, mostly stemming from those scenes of like the main woman, I can't remember her name, but how she was sort of hesitant at first to let Bill Skarsgård into the Airbnb, even though he had every right to be there as she did because they both had it, booked. And so um yeah, there's definitely some very charitable readings of this movie going on with stuff like that. And um but yeah, I mean, I guess to dig into the stuff that we actually loved about the movie, you alluded to this in your intro about for the first hour and a half, I'd say maybe 80 minutes, this movie's sort of firing on all cylinders, as far as you are just bought in, and you're just the structure works so well. That sort of Rashomon style structure works so well for just doling out information in just the amounts that he wants it to be doled out, and you're just kind of sort of you just want to know what's going on. You want to know what the fuck is happening. And it was just so effective in that way, and just building tension. And I really want to call that out again. How well this movie is fucking scary, and I don't think you can say that about a lot of modern horror movies because they get so caught up in the stupid like trauma horror and
Yeah.
bullshit like that. And like the I think the single best scene in this entire movie is when the door to the house opens, and the mom like shambles her way out with the scissors, and she comes to the car, and you hear the car door opening. Just people in my theater were squirming at that, and they were making like almost like subconscious noises. People
Mm-hmm.
people were like, oh, like what is happening? Stuff like that. And like just professional level directing going on there. Just fantastic. And so yeah, I don't know what anything that you want to call out in that vein.
Well, the next little beats in that particular sequence when you hear the scissors, you don't see them, you hear them,
Mhm.
and then they enter frame. And the and I guess like in the doc you kind of call it out. Anytime you just see that door swing open and swing shut and you just see blackness on the inside, like that was deeply unsettling. And like just the imagery of the children running Naruto style, just
Yeah.
like I wonder, I didn't really understand why the zombies all had that weird little look where like their arms are just folded back like that in like a V shape. the the first time that like Mrs. Gandy sees the parents in the house, like that made
Yeah.
me just reflexively just like recoil. And like the
Well, the whole time that the when the crackhead breaks into the house,
yeah,
the whole time I was just like, "Oh my God, this is just not gonna end well." And he just sort of again, just professional levels of building tension here, where he sort of makes his way. We're already familiar with the layout of the house from the number of times we've seen it, and so he makes his way from like the upstairs to the downstairs, and we know where the parents are going to be. We know where they're going to be seated, and so we know that's coming. And then eventually he makes his way to the basement, and it's
Yeah.
just like, it's like, dude, you are descending into hell. You
Yeah.
are slowly making your way, and like, just yeah,
And
loved that scene
that's
too.
like a Krieger, like I guess hallmark at this point is that
Yeah, it
notion
is.
of going downstairs. Like it's never a good thing if you go down into a basement in any of his movies. Like that is kind of like the switch that flips when your whatever sense of safety you have just vanishes. And as a character, or I mean, as the audience, that character is in fucking trouble. Like
Yeah,
it's guaranteed. And I just want to shout out that the crackhead character, like that
yeah.
was so realistic and like realized in just the brief moments he had, like when he's taking the safety pin to scrape the crack back out of his pipe so he can get one more hit before he starts going on his adventures to make more money. Like, and I that portrayal like was just, it was honest, in a way that I don't think like most movies would do. Like, because yeah, like you're like there's nothing sympathetic. You know that everything this person does is a scheme to try and make money. Like the when he's on the phone with a family member, and you can tell that he's harmed them. His addiction has harmed them one too many times for them to want to have anything to do with him. And he instantly, I just want to call this out. He instantly just opens up a car door, steals a little kid backpack that has a fire tablet with these exact headphones. I was just like, oh shit, there it is. Like I loved that. And the fact that he couldn't make any money off of them, like also made me laugh a little bit. Cause yeah, obviously stolen, like come on, man. Like this pawn shop guy, he's never going to move that. So why would he buy it? But
Yeah, I mean, that whole character, yeah, very well realized, and brought a lot of like humor to the movie, a lot of
yeah,
that sort of Krieger style humor, and that is something I wanted to call out too. Like the humor in this movie is great. I mean, just really really well done. Everything from the stuff that got the biggest laughs, I guess, in my theater was Brolin's "what the fuck" after his dream, and the crackhead, when after he's been zombified, how he keeps getting up to take more punishment from Brolin's character. And then personally for me, one thing that I wanted to call out, I mean, this wasn't as overt, belly laughs type thing, but just something I noticed was I loved how Benedict Wong and his husband were Disney adults.
yes.
They had the Mickey and Minnie shirts on, and I just love the fact that when we see them at their home, they're just getting ready to like house a
You
plate
went up?
full of like way too many hot
Oh.
dogs for two people. There's like he brings out that tray of like 8 hot dogs, and it's like,
Well,
oh my god, these guys are getting ready to just fucking
that
devour
little like
these.
hand gesture he does when he's approaching.
Yeah, yeah. So
And they're old like early aughts LCD flat screen that they were watching
yeah,
it on. Like that just made me laugh. It's like these guys haven't needed to update their TV ever in the last like 20 years. But and
yeah, that
and,
was
and and
great.
when they were shopping, and like he's on the phone with Gandhi, and he's all caught up in that conversation, and his husband's just like, ooh, do we want these fruity pebbles or these fruity pebbles?
Yeah,
Like they
yeah, that stuff was all great. But then yeah, of course, I mean the ending too. I mean the entire end sequence is, I mean, you're simultaneously like laughing but horrified because it's so like, it's just insane what is happening. I mean, that part was so well filmed too. There's that really long dolly shot where the camera just follows it's kind of a one take shot where it just follows the kids throughout an entire one of those houses that they run through both sets of windows, the windows they enter into, and then the windows that they exit through. And so, yeah, just love that whole end sequence.
Because and, and that's really what crystallizes the Grimm brothers fairy tale aspect of it to me, because it's like
Mhm.
that's the just like ending that befalls any wicked witch, is getting
Yeah.
destroyed by their victims. It just did it in like this is a total Krieger, another staple of his, which is just awful things happening to people's heads, like being completely vaporized, like and just shocking gore, shocking
Mhm.
levels of gore, but it's not gratuitous. It's like it's earned and satisfying when it happens. Like when Benedict Wong gets fucking brained by that car, and you just and like you see what's left of his head. But I guess it yeah, like and that's like the subtle explanations. Like as far as like the magic in this movie and how it works, it's all explained by showing. Like there's like we don't need it said out loud, like why, like to give us the mechanics of it. But even the mechanics of like stopping one of the zombies, you could literally shoot one in the throat and it wouldn't quit. Like you need to destroy the brain and kill all the function.
Mhm.
And
Well,
but
let's kind of let's go along that path for a second. The explanations as far as the central mystery, one it's resolved. And one thing that I kind of felt this movie was lacking was some, a good deal of ambiguity, because when we discussed movies like Bring Her Back on this very show, and Long Legs on this very show, it inspired a lot of really good discussion about the world building of those films, and the little kind of nuggets, the breadcrumbs that were given to sort of make our own assumptions as the audience. And I don't feel like there's as much of that in this movie, if any at all. And I was just trying to think of like interesting questions I could ask or I could bring up when we were talking
yeah,
today. And really, like, the only thing I thought of was like, why does the witch appear to the crackhead in the forest and then also in the dreams of Julia Garner's character and Josh Brolin's character? Um, and then also, like, who is the girl narrating the movie? I mean, is it even an important question to be asking who that girl is? Like, does she tie
yeah,
in any way, or does that tie in any way? So I don't know. What do you have any sort of theories to either one of those questions?
I do. I guess like ultimately, the witch is a parasite. She's feeding off her victims directly to like get life force, get younger. Because and I have a follow up kind of like question from from this one, but like she's also feeding on the despair and the sadness and the grief of the entire community. They're the
Mhm.
families themselves, and just the not knowing that everyone is going through. And the she's a little like it in that respect, because it's like that's just like it's the perfect like smorgasbord, of just getting all kinds of juice, out of the situation. As far as the narrator, that to me, like if you found this on a message board, that little girl is just the person telling you the story. And I wish we had gotten more of that, as opposed to just the bookends that she functions as. And it almost would have been more interesting if that narrator was Alex, to me. That like he's the one
Yeah.
telling the story. Because
Well, the way
the
that I've sort of internalized it, I went back and I found a transcript of all the stuff that girl says, like a written transcript, and I read over it, and she clearly says in the beginning part, the one at the beginning of the movie, that she is a student at that school. She
Mm,
is a student at the school where this happened. And we don't know if she's a student, if she's like a peer to these kids, or if she is like a student just years ahead, like 20, this could be like 20 years in the future that this girl
yeah,
is talking from. And
yeah.
so
And this is just the urban
um
legend over time.
exactly. And
Yeah,
um that's kind of I've heard it been described that this girl is like a little girl giving like a class presentation where, she's standing up in front of the class and, as like a, sixth grader or seventh grader, whatever it is. And she's like reading off her little like presentation
her
paper,
her
like,
creative writing assignment or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I kind of like that theory that she's just this girl, she heard about this urban legend and she's just kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to do my presentation about that or whatever."
Because and I guess God, yeah, because this is my follow up. If we are going to, I guess, buy into the idea that this actually happened and it's not just an urban legend about it, then like, do you think that Gladys the witch was actually the aunt of the mother of Alex's mother, or did she just choose them as like her next victims?
Well, I mean, within the context of the movie, I think she is, only because they, I mean, they anticipated her. Unless
Yeah,
unless she, I don't know, I guess unless she's been like brainwashing them from the very beginning in some way. They were, when the dad picks up Alex from school, he's like, "Oh, your aunt's coming, blah blah blah. She's probably not going to be with us for long, blah blah blah." And then like, so I mean, they're anticipating her arrival, and so I do think, I mean, I would assume that the relationship is real there.
mm-hmm.
And and then they talk about how like, "Oh, she didn't even show up at our wedding, and now she wants to,
Yeah.
be here." So I don't know. Did you find any, or did you see any evidence that that wasn't the case?
No, it's
Okay,
like my head canon, if you will,
sure.
because
Mhm.
like it just seemed so like unbelievably cruel that you would do that to relatives. You know
Oh
what
yeah.
I mean? But then again, like everything she does is cruel. It's how she survives. But I liked the idea of her being like an eternal, like malevolent force that's just
Mm,
existed throughout the centuries. And this is just where she is now. Like
sure.
I've found
Mhm.
that notion intriguing, but there's nothing really to give you that impression. Because like what is presented, there's really no reason to doubt it. Apart from how readily she's able to manipulate everybody, seemingly despite like not giving off normal vibes whatsoever. Let's dig into this a little bit. Can we really buy the idea that law enforcement was so inept that they couldn't have solved this? Like at any point?
Well, yeah, I mean, I made a note in our doc that I think there's a reason, that scene when the cops, when they do all the cleaning and they kick all of the children out of the house for a little bit
Where do
to who
they
knows
go?
where.
Yeah.
Yeah, where do they go? Yeah. It's like, there's a reason why we don't actually see that scene play out. Like the cops walk in the front door and they look up at the stairs at Alex, and then that scene ends. And the reason why we don't see that scene is because it would be ridiculous if we did. It would be the cops walking around the house and like, like pointing out all the weird shit. And so it would break the suspension of disbelief, I think. And so that's why the scene cuts there when it does. And yeah, there is some moments that really stretch the
Yeah.
credulity, like the Benedict Wong and his husband just letting the witch do whatever the fuck she wants in their kitchen. That was like, okay, guys, come on, like just. And I don't know, maybe that's more of a commentary on how like tolerant we are of like as a society of like other people being weird, or like how we don't want to like in the age of like people being able to film everything and then put you on the internet, we don't want to like call strangers out all that much because they could be like psychopaths under the surface, or they could
Hmm.
start filming us or whatever. I don't know. Maybe again, I think it's being charitable to the movie to
Well,
say that.
yeah, and like the Benedict Wong's husband, it's like his Wong is like, this is really inappropriate. Just get the fuck away. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh no, like she's in distress. She put on a great performance to
Hmm.
get in the door, and begin her process. And but yeah, all, like all that said, like like I don't know, there was a murder case that I wrote about this year where at the trial it was revealed that the guy who had killed another man and hidden his body in a boiler room in the basement of a barber shop had led the police on a tour through the building, and he just like deliberately did not take them to the boiler room. He said, oh, it's just like a storage closet, and they just accepted that because they didn't have a warrant. They were just being like given a goodwill, yeah, I'll show you around, so you can check things out, because this guy didn't want to become even more of a suspect than he was already, and they just let him lead them on a tour and walk literally feet away from the man that they were looking for. And so, like, I can kind of accept it. But in this situation, no, you would turn that place fucking apart. Like you would be like, we need to make sure that they're not there. Like this lady is weird. I don't believe that this dude just had a stroke and like where the fuck did they hide his wife? I don't remember what the explanation was, but like there was everything was just so bizarre about
Yeah.
that whole situation. So you're telling me that this new lady who just showed up in the situation is taking care of the one little boy that didn't disappear? Huh. That really makes her suspicious. Who is she? Let's run her through the social security system. It's
Yeah.
like does she actually exist? It's like, where's her driver's license? Like there's like 20 fucking questions that like any good inspector should ask before they just go, well, guess they're not here. Guess they have nothing to do with it. Bullshit. Like, no, you look through their fucking garbage and be like, why do they drink? Why is there so much soup? Like,
Yeah, Campbell soup, yeah. And that's unfortunately, that's like that's the one of the downfalls of setting this in like the modern day is that you have all these things like police databases and cameras everywhere, and they do use that to their advantage at some points, like having the doorbell cameras footage of the kids and stuff like that. But then there are certain points where oh, this probably would have in some respects worked better as a period piece
yeah,
because then but then there's certain stuff you wouldn't be able to do, like the body cam stuff and the car camera, the police car camera stuff. There's just it's kind of a win or lose both ways situation as far as setting it in the modern day or setting it as a period piece.
yeah. But then, like,
But
yeah, having it be modern kind of makes it even scarier.
it
Because,
does, yeah.
yeah, because
Because we
even,
have all this
yeah,
stuff,
and
and
we
even
still,
though we
yeah,
have it all, we still lose 17 children. They still walk off into darkness or whatever. And um, well, one thing I do want to, to go back to your, I just like thought of this because I was looking at the doc and I had made a note about the usage of the word consumption when she's talking with Benedict Wong at the in the principal's office, the very first scene when the aunt shows up. And I want to use this for a second as some sort of proof of your theory that this woman is a like this like enduring like centuries old like force that just goes around and does whatever she wants and preys on families, because her usage of the word consumption is so old fashioned that it's only something that a like 200-year-old like witch
Yeah.
would use. So
Yeah.
so that's interesting. I just thought of that just now, but I loved that little scene where he's like, what even is consumption? Something from the Oregon Trail, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, let's throw that in the evidence folder for your theory that this woman is like 250 years old or something.
Because in all the discourse, I'm the only one bringing that up. Like everything, like all the other, like YouTubers out there talking about this are taking it as at face value and finding references to The Shining that don't exist. This one dude
Yeah.
literally said, "Oh, the clock stops at 2:17. That's the same. That's the hotel room number that that Danny went into and ran into the decaying old lady." I'm like, bitch, it's 2:37. They made a fucking documentary just about that, and you're getting it wrong, like, but you
Mhm.
say something confidently, people will just accept it without thinking about it, because no one in the comments called him out, and I almost did, but I didn't want to give him any more engagement that I had. I regretted clicking on it while I was
Yeah.
like making all the assets last night. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Because there's a lot of other things to look into beyond just making your conspiracy board. Like just there's actual nuggets, and then there's fool's gold, and it's amazing how much content is generated these days using fool's gold. Like we are
Oh, yeah.
bound to see some AI narrated like slop videos very shortly being like 10 things you missed in weapons, like, and it's all just going to be obvious bullshit. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, God, I don't even want to think about that. Well, I guess, as we kind of bring it to a close here, one thing we like to do often with these sort of up-and-comer directors is talk about what's next. So, Zach Creggar, his next film, the only thing on his docket as of right now is a 2026 uh, reboot or standalone movie. I guess we're not sure yet if this is good. I mean, who knows? If it makes enough money, it'll probably become a reboot. But as of right now, it's a standalone movie for Resident Evil. And the only thing that we know as of right now is a short plot synopsis that doesn't really sound like any of the actual Resident Evil games.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this guy doing a Resident Evil movie?
Well, I wish he wasn't.
Yeah.
Especially when he's not being straight up about it. Like, if they just did like an actual, I don't know, it might be because they tried it recently with that like Welcome to Raccoon City movie, which I enjoyed for what it was. But like I could see Creggar doing like a really awesome, like somewhat faithful, interpretation of that first game. Like where it has a lot in common with the GameCube remake. Where it's less cheesy and more straightforward, in terms of like just it really capitalizing on the horror of the premise. But I understand that it's that particular franchise is just it's in the dirt in a way that like it makes it hard to want to go back to that well again. It's like
Sure.
so yeah, maybe do something different, but this just seems pedestrian. The premise that we've gotten, like, you just have a guy that rides a bike and delivers stuff being sent to a weird lab hospital that obviously is an umbrella corporation operation, and you're just gonna have monsters show up. Like, what's interesting about that? I just don't see it. Like, he might as well just be making like
An original
an
movie.
original, or like making an Outlast movie, like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean the only when you look at this plot synopsis that mentions a hospital, the only game that I know of, I haven't played them all, but the only game that this bears any resemblance to is Resident Evil 3. And
mm,
that's really only because about, a third of that game takes place in a hospital. And so I don't know if they're gonna go that route. But the one interesting thing that people are really glomming onto is the only other real piece of information that's come out about this movie is there has been exactly one cast member for this movie announced, and it's an actor. If you go to the IMDb page, there's one actor attached to this. His name is Austin Abrams,
Hmm.
and when you look at his you look at his headshot on his IMDb page here, he really does look kind of like a dead ringer for Leon Kennedy. Maybe a little young.
Really?
He might be a little young, but when you look, I'm looking at his headshot right now, and it's like, yeah, I could see this guy being a Leon Kennedy type, especially with his hairstyle. He's got that kind of same hairstyle, and so I really do hope that, if you want to do your original story, I guess go ahead. But I do hope that the movie at least involves characters from the games,
Yeah.
these characters that these villains and heroes that people have sort of become endeared to, because it's so lame when they're, like you said, when they just make a movie that might as well have just been an original movie because it bears no resemblance to the property that it's trying to adapt. So, um, yeah, we'll kind of see where that goes, and yeah, hopefully this guy doesn't get caught up in the studio machine now at this point, as far as like, oh, I'm just gonna go be a studio guy from now on. After I
Yeah.
make Resident Evil, I'm gonna, next on the dock is a Marvel movie, and then next on the dock after that is I don't know, like Dune 4 or something like that. Who
Dude,
knows? Like,
Creggar doing God Emperor would be fucking rad. I don't know. Like that actually would be interesting. Maybe, but because it's just like why we're glad the Philippou brothers didn't do Street Fighter. Like
yeah,
their second movie was, worthy of their effort and their time, and was original, and like I don't know, the Hollywood is in such a crisis of storytelling right now. Like it's like I wouldn't want to have anything to do with the Resident Evil franchise were I him, considering
yeah,
like
no,
they had that TV show that was unbelievably bad, and they had a movie that no, like I think I was one of the few people who liked it. I saw it like at a $7 Tuesday, like at the Grand, when it came out, and it was just something fun to do, because we love Resident Evil, and it was for the most part just a basic. Like it's funny, but it's like if Krieger had made that movie instead of the people who did, it would have been better, like
yeah.
yeah, they've already done that recently and it didn't work, so I guess we'll just have to see, because the but yeah, nothing good comes from selling your soul to Hollywood these days, because unfortunately, like there is somebody making a Street Fighter movie, and unless they really are like allowed to just do whatever the fuck they want, it probably will be bad. It probably will be
Yeah,
bad,
more than likely.
more than likely. But weapons, not bad. Just calm down, people. Just like, and I guess I know why they do it. It's all for the clickbait. But let's go on to the mentionables here.
Yeah. So yeah, my mentionable this week is an amalgam of things, I guess, and I call this the games of Kyle Thompson. And Kyle Thompson is a game developer. He has made 3 games, and over the last 2 weeks or so, I've played all 3 of his games. Um, the games are, I guess, in release order, called Sheepo, Islets, and Crypt Custodian. And I kind of played these in a weird order, though. Crypt Custodian is currently on Xbox Game Pass, which is where I played it. And I loved it so much that I actually went back and bought his previous 2 games so that I could play those also. And what all 3 of these games are, they'd fall under the genre of Metroidvania, if you're familiar with that genre at all, where
Love it.
you,
Love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
2D game, you go around, you collect upgrades, which give you access to different areas of the game. And they can all be completed in roughly 7 to 10 hours. And they all have kind of this similar art style that is sort of a mix of like whimsy pastoral settings, but then they have like really, really ugly monsters that you're fighting. And yeah, just I loved all three of these games. They're just really, really worthwhile Metroidvanias. It's really fascinating to see like the maturation of a game developer when you play all three of their games, like from the first one to the third one. And you can see this guy's talent just grow when you play all three of these games one after the other. And completely by chance, he announced his fourth game this week. Like I had no idea this was going to happen. Nobody knew about this, but his fourth game, which is going to be called Well Dweller, was announced this past week, and really, really looking forward to it now that I've played these previous three. And this is just a single guy too. This is just
That's
a guy
crazy.
that, yeah, he did all three of these games by himself. The only thing that he didn't provide was the music, which was done by his brother. All the soundtracks for all his games are done by his brother, and so yeah, really, really looking forward to Well Dweller. And if you've got Game Pass, go play Crypt Custodian, and then if you like that enough, go buy his other games because they are also very good.
Because this is the new AAA of gaming people. It's like one man operations. And we need to
Oh yeah,
support these people as much as we can. We need to make as many self made millionaires as possible, get game developers out of the slave trade that is working for these conglomerates. And speaking of one of those conglomerates, I sent some shekels their way during like a Steam sale a long time ago. Because while I did own Mass Effect Legendary Edition, because I got it for free through like Prime Gaming a long time ago, I couldn't play it on my Steam Deck because of the way that the Steam Deck works. So I bought it on Steam for like $3, so I could
oh wow,
actually get it, more easily on there. And I've been replaying the first one because I want to do like a full run through of the trilogy again, mostly just to play Mass Effect 2. And I'm just reminded of like what the appeal was, which is getting to know all of the other characters. Like I spend more time just in the conversation mechanics and just flying around the planets than I do like in the combat gameplay of it all. Like these were very rewarding RPGs. I loved I'd forgotten like all the weird like side aliens that just are never a part of your team, like the Volus or the Hanar and the Elcor. Like I just forgot how unique and inspired the storytelling and world building was in this series. And I had forgotten how terrible the combat mechanics were in the first game. They were
yeah.
so
Uh,
bad. And
mhm.
it's a testament to like how improved the Mass Effect 2 was in comparison, because I just found myself being like, oh, this isn't how I remember it being, because I spent so much more time replaying the second one. And I've finally gotten the whole crew together in Mass Effect 1. You know, I that's so I'm not far into it at all. Haven't done many side quests, but it just makes me sad that they have, like I played a little bit of Andromeda, hated it, and I'm
Yeah.
just like everybody else. And we've all been waiting for the tease that they gave us for Mass Effect 4, that I now am like pissed because that was 4 fucking years ago. Like they put out that trailer, they show Liara finding an N7 emblem in the snow at like some dig site, and we haven't heard a peep out of them since. And it just makes me worried. Like what's going wrong behind the scenes that they haven't found a way to make a modern Mass Effect game? Because yeah, like that first game, nearly 20 years old, and it looks it and shows it, even in the remastered sense. Because like it kind of foretold the problem Starfield had, being a loading simulator, but it still was, arresting and grabbing enough that you wanted to stay involved and do shit. And it also reminded me that we still haven't gotten that Legendary Pictures adaptation yet.
Oh yeah.
Because like we went to Comic-Con, we were at the Legendary panel. They didn't really talk about it, but we did get like that little die cast like Legendary Pictures van and a free copy of Mass Effect 2 for our trouble for going to that. And yeah, they haven't made any of that. Like I'm like pretty much everything that was like pitched to us at that Comic-Con never came to fruition. From that weird Paradise Lost movie that Alex Proyas was going to do
Oh yeah, right.
with God, what's his face, with Rocket Raccoon. Yeah, but it's been fun getting back into this series, and I'm in 2008 all over again. Basically.
Out of curiosity, have you played like a lot of the DLCs, particularly for, I mean, there really isn't much in Mass Effect 1 that's as far as DLC worth playing, but have you played the DLCs for like 2 and 3, like the story stuff?
I did all of them for 2, and then that's the annoying thing is
Okay.
realizing that I've bought all this shit for my
Yeah.
360, but I didn't get the DLCs for 3 because the main game pissed me off so much. I didn't get, so I didn't have the Prothean character in the third
Okay.
game, but I loved all of two's DLC, like especially like
Yeah, like Shadow
the
Broker and
Shadow
stuff.
Broker and
Yeah.
Kasumi's little side quests that she had. Yeah,
Mhm.
the and even the
Well, if you
Arrival,
do,
even Arrival was really fucking cool
yeah,
too.
Arrival, yeah, that one's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. If you do eventually make your way to 3, um do play, because I think every piece of DLC is included with
Hmm.
the
Except for Pinnacle
legendary.
Station, which
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
because the source code was corrupted and they couldn't bring it in for some reason. But Pinnacle
Yeah, that's
Station was
right.
just kind of like like it was just like a bunch of like it was like VR, quests, just like do a combat scenario basically, from what I recall. Yeah.
Yeah, do play, if you do eventually get to 3, get around to playing 3 again, do play Leviathan and Omega, because those are, in my opinion, underrated as far as like side stories, side quests go in that universe and in the entire Mass Effect universe. Those are both really, really great, and
Because Leviathan
almost,
is where they find the progenitor race to the Reapers, right? Like
yes.
you're like underwater, and then Omega, you're it's like some kind of quest involving Carrie Ann Moss's character. Like is it
Yep.
Arya, the mob boss lady? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to get into that because like I just Mass Effect 2 is like one of my all-time favorite games. And I didn't get
Mhm.
to experience her because I didn't buy the DLC for it. But now I just have to work my way there, like an hour at a time.
Yeah.
It's been a good time. But that does it for us this week. We're going to be coming back in 2 weeks with um a feature
Hopefully.
review. Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah. As long as everything works out. What's that next movie going to be?
Yeah, so we're hoping to do the new movie from the Japanese director Neo Sora. That is called Happy End. And that's kind of his new movie, I guess, about. I've only really seen the trailer for it, haven't read a whole bunch. I don't want to spoil myself, but it's sort of about like, it's almost like a coming of age story in Japan that's set against like the surveillance state. So really kind of interesting juxtaposition of genres there, or of ideas there. But yeah, looking forward to that one.
Right on. Well, thank you for joining us and have a good couple weeks. Take care.
Yep. See ya.